In this lesson, we will look at plasticity, the different hemispheres, split brain research, and the endocrine system. First of all, if a nerve cell or neuron dies, it cannot regenerate. However, our brains have this miraculous ability to make up new neural connections to modify and compensate for that loss. This is the principle behind physical therapy. If, let's say, your motor cortex is damaged due to an illness or a stroke, let's say, in the right hemisphere, and you lose the ability to move your arm in the left side of your body. Through training and practice and physical therapy, new neural connections around that damaged area start to link up, and you will eventually regain the ability to ambulate. This video is an excellent example of plasticity. If the link does not work for you, you can Google Jodi's story, Jodi, and then plasticity. Our brains are divided into two hemispheres, each with four main lobes that we mentioned in the last lesson. Some psychologists believe that each hemisphere has particular tasks or specializations. Some psychologists believe that the left hemisphere is the more intellectual part of our brain, that this part of the brain deals with reading, writing, science, math, and logic. Some believe that the right hemisphere of the brain is the more creative side, the artsy side, and also dealing with spatial tasks. One thing we do know for sure is that speaking does reside in the left hemisphere. As we talked about in the last lesson, the Broca area that allows the muscles in your mouth to move in order to speak, and also the Wernicke's area, which allows us to understand language, both reside exclusively in the left hemisphere. When looking at the right and the left hemisphere, the right hemisphere controls the left side of the body and vice versa. The two hemispheres are able to communicate with one another because of the large band of nerve fibers that connects the two. This big band of nerve fibers is called the corpus callosum, and this allows impulses to be sent from the left to the right hemisphere and vice versa. In the 1960s, physicians started using a procedure that severed the corpus callosum. So after this procedure, impulses could not be sent from one hemisphere to the next. This was performed for a brief period of time before we had medication for seizures to help people with epilepsy. This was an attempt to decrease seizure activity for epileptic patients. For many, seizures would begin in one hemisphere and travel to the other. As they traveled to the second hemisphere, they became more intense and increased in duration or length. Research showed that animals who had the procedure done could still function as they did before. Humans who had this done also seemed to be unaffected in their daily routine. Upon further investigation, it was discovered that there was a fundamental difference. These individuals were operating like they had two separate brains. Try to take a pen in both hands. Simultaneously, try to draw a square in the left hand and a triangle in the right. Doing it at the same time is basically impossible because the information is conflicting with our corpus callosum still intact. On the other hand, someone who has had the split brain procedure can perform that task with ease. Split brain research involved trying to figure out what differences individuals would have due to the severing of the corpus callosum. So as you can see in this diagram, they would put up a partition and an impulse would be sent to either the right or the left eye. If the impulse was sent to the left eye, or let's say the right eye first, if the impulse was sent to the right eye and it traveled to the left hemisphere for processing, the person would be able to say what they saw. So let's say they saw a picture of a fork with their right eye. If they were asked, what did you see? That impulse went to the left brain and they would say, I saw a fork. If the impulse went into the left eye, it would travel to the right hemisphere. Here, if a fork was flashed to the left eye, it goes to the right hemisphere for processing, and you ask the individual, what did you see? They would say, I don't know, I didn't see anything. And that is because that impulse cannot get from the right hemisphere over to the left, where the language centers reside. So they wouldn't be able to talk about it or explain it. In addition to that, things get a little bit weird. If you send an image of a fork to the right eye, that goes to the left hemisphere, and you say, what did you see? They'll say a fork, because that's your language center. They can talk about it. And if the person says, reach out and pick up the object that you see, then again, they can actually reach out and pick up the fork and explain, well, that's what I saw. Again, going back to the image, the fork being flashed to the left eye, that impulse goes to the right hemisphere. If you ask, what did you see? They say, I don't know, I didn't see anything. But if you say, pick up the item, and there's a variety of items there, they will actually pick up that fork. And it's because the sensory neurons are going in, communicating with the motor neurons, going back out, causing the arm to move or motor or pick up the item. It just cannot get to the left hemisphere where the language center is to explain it. This is a link to a video that explains split brain research. If the link does not work, you can Google Scientific American Frontiers and split brain research. The end of this unit just briefly mentions the endocrine system, which is your system of glands and hormones. Hormones are also chemical messengers. However, they're a lot slower than a neurotransmitter. Neurotransmitters are electrically charged, so they zip, zip, zip through the body. So they work really fast. Hormones take a long time to get to the brain for processing. We'll talk more about the hormones and different glands in upcoming lessons.